Welcome to Schupak Sports. I'm Marty Schupak, and in Schupak Sports, we discuss different sports skills. I try to give you drills that will help you become a better parent, a better coach, and have your players or son and daughter progress at a good pace and a fundamentally sound pace. Today, we're going to re explore throwing, and I've done that before on the Schupak Sports YouTube channel, but we're making some changes. So this is a little more extensive part of throwing. We're going to go over some good drills and some different techniques. But before we do, I love to start out with a little sports trivia. And if I remember, I'll give you the answer at the end. Here we go. All right. The actor Burt Reynolds, who I really liked, he was in one of my favorite movies, Deliverance. He was actually recruited to play football from high school. He was a great high school football player. The question is, where did he go to college to play football and what position did he play? So the question is, Burt Reynolds, the late great actor, what college was he recruited to play football and what position? Let's discuss throwing with T-ball. A lot of you might have started your T-ball season, and I just want to give you some hints about throwing, which is one of the toughest skills for young kids to really accomplish and to do correct. A couple of things I want to mention, though, too. A lot of it is common sense. I just want to reinforce when you're teaching throwing, make sure with young T-ball kids, you separate them. You're going to see the balls flying all over the place. You want to make sure no one gets hurt. Preferably, you use soft covered balls, especially at the beginning of the season. And if your league just uses soft covered balls for T-ball, then that's what you use. Another hint, and I've said this a number of times, early in the T-ball season, and if you're doing this in your own backyard, you want to separate skills. If you're teaching throwing, then no catching. If you're teaching catching, no throwing. So if you're in your backyard and you're having your son and daughter throw, and let's say you're going to have them throw into space, you're not going to catch it. You're going to be opposite them. You have a bucket of balls and they take them out one at a time throwing. Now, if you want, you could be next to your son and daughter and you could correct whatever you think they're doing wrong. All right. Uh, when they're throwing, try to make sure their front foot is pointing to about where the target is, which is hard to do. Now, remember, a righty player will lead with his left foot. A lefty player will lead with his right foot. And I'm just going over some of these before we get into the drills. I'm going to show about, I don't know, 7 or 8 drills. All right. Another hint is when you're teaching throwing and T-ball, keep in mind around the country, some programs start as early as 4, go up to 6, and some go up to 7. You want to try to separate them by ability. And you don't do this by saying 5-year-olds over there, 6-year-olds over here. You should develop a list after the first couple of practices who you think your better athletes are, and you separate them that way. When you are practicing throwing, if you're throwing into space or different drills, it's a good idea to put a cone out there as a target. Now, the player won't hit the target, almost guaranteed. I mean, there's a chance they could hit it. But what this is doing is it's helping to keep the player's head steady so it's not wandering. When you see young 5 and 6-year-olds, they're throwing the ball wild because their head is going all over the place. But by having them focus on a target, and again, I like to use a cone, it'll help steady the head. Not 100%, but you'll be surprised that the ball won't go wandering as much as it normally would. Keep in mind, too, when you're doing different drills, a few episodes back, I had mentioned on a couple of drills with soft cover balls or rag balls to throw it against the screen. And I got a couple of notes from administrators at different leagues saying that it's bad protocol to throw something against the screen. My opinion is you don't want to throw a hard ball. If you're at a school, you want to use soft covered balls. And if you're using your league field, ask whoever's in charge of maintenance and show them what you're using. I don't think there's anything wrong. And again, if you looked at my previous episodes, I do what's called I create a rag ball. I go down to a home center, I buy a $10 box, $12 box of rags, and I wrap it around with masking tape. And it's a wonderful item to use for toss drills against the wall, against the fence. So make sure your league, they allow you to hit something soft against a fence. Okay, keep in mind too, years ago, I was doing it with a hardball toss drill with my oldest son and a friend, and I didn't know any better. I shouldn't have been doing it, but one of the balls hit the crossbar. It ricocheted and hit his eye. Long story short, we were in the hospital for the next 2 or 3 hours. Nothing happened. Keep in mind, safety is the biggest concern you have, whatever drill you're going to do on the field. With young kids and throwing, you want to have them try to hold the ball on top. And the first drill I'm going to show you will show you an idea to get them to hold the ball on top. If they don't, it's not the worst thing in the world. Another thing I want to mention too, and I've mentioned this with hitting, with throwing, with fielding, and especially with batting with the older kids. A lot of times, if you correct one or two things a player is doing wrong, other things he's doing wrong will kind of auto correct. And this helps you as a parent or coach because we don't want, and I use this term all the time, you don't want to overcoach and underteach. All right, let's get to some of the drills we're going to do. I'll go through it quickly. I'll try to hold it up. My producer said I have to count silently to 2. And let me look at the first drill. The first drill is called the ball drag drill. Simple drill. And again, a lot of these drills you're not going to spend 15 minutes on. You could divide the team into stations. You could have them do it 2 or 3 times, but you're going to move on to the next drill. What you're doing here is you're sitting down the player and they have the ball next to them. You want to try to get them to sit up. And with the ball in front of them, they drag it behind them. Okay. And then they drag it further and they bring it up and then they throw it and they release it. What this is doing, and I'll hold it up close. Number one is forcing the player, the T-ball player, to grip the ball on top. And also it's getting him used to bringing it behind him. A lot of times kids that throw the ball incorrectly, they're arming it, we call it. They're not bringing their arm all the way back. This little drill will help. You don't have to spend more than 5 minutes on it. So that's the ball drag drill. And I'll show you afterwards where in my book where you have these drills. This is another drill. It's called the ball flip wrist drill. And they're going to need some personal instruction, maybe one-on-one. I know this picture is showing a lot of individual players doing it. But what you're doing here is you're taking a ball, and if I should have had it before, but I'll grab this. And if you look, they're standing, and the ball, the arm is closest to the screen or the wall. What you want to do as coach, okay, you want to try to get their arm in kind of a right angle. And again, you're not going to tell the kids, have your arm in a right angle. They don't know what a right angle is from an isosceles triangle. You got to show them. And if they're going to repeat doing it, keep showing them. And what they're going to do is they're going to put their wrist back, and then they're going to just release it with their wrist, just like that. And what we're doing with this is we're getting some action, what we call the wrist flexor. Some of the kids sometimes won't bend their wrist, and this drill is helping them. You don't have to tell the kids we're going to work on their wrist flexor. They have no idea what you'd be talking about. So let me hold this up again. This is another very, very good drill. Basic. Again, you can't spend more than a couple of minutes on this. And each kid should have a multiple amount of baseballs. And as I mention all the time, if you're going to spend any extra money as a coach or parent, do it on baseballs and keep track of them. I say this over and over again. I'm amazed at how sometimes coaches, after practice, will leave the field and there'll be baseballs on the field. After every practice, I either have my team or myself or assistant coaches, we comb the field. And I'm telling you, more than half the practices I've run over 30 years, I come away with more baseballs than when I started. Take care of the baseballs. Spend your money wisely, but if you spend it, do it on extra baseballs. Similar to the last drill, and this is called the forward wrist flip. And what we're doing is, instead of standing up, they're going to be on one knee. If they're, I think it's righty, they're on the right knee, lefty, they're on the left knee. And again, if you look close, the elbow, it's the ball is actually behind the ear. But what is key is, if you look, the arm and the elbow, it's not going below the shoulder. Not so important in T-ball. And what they're doing is they're flicking the ball and they're throwing it out into space, just like that. The reason I mention with the elbow not going below the shoulder, as the kids get older, and if you watch your pitchers, one of the first signs of a pitcher getting tired is when his elbow drops, goes below the shoulder. That happens, and also a pitcher, when you see a pitcher missing a lot with high balls, in other words, balls out of strike zone that aren't, let's say, lower in the dirt, but most of them are all high, that's another sign of the player getting tired. This drill is actually one of my favorites when teaching throwing. Okay, this is called the freestanding bench throwing drill. The history behind this is that I find that a lot of the young kids, when you try to explain to them to bring their arm all the way back, they don't know, they think they're bringing it back, but they don't know what it feels like. Okay, so in this drill, and I don't want you to go out and buy a freestanding bench or 12 for your team. When I practice, it's at a local school, and there was a bench outside, actually a couple, and I came up with the idea. And I'm putting a player on a bench, give him a tennis ball. I'm standing at the foot of it. He's bringing his arm down. He's rotating it. Let's see, over here. And he's releasing it to me. It doesn't have to go right to me. Why this drill is effective, and remember, I said that kids don't feel a lot of times their arm going back. You could tell them and they could swear, I'm bringing it back. But what this drill is doing with the bench, gravity is helping to bring their arm down. And what you want them to do, you want the kids that don't feel their arm going down to feel it, experience it the first time. And then you want to transition that feeling to when they're standing up. So this is the freestanding bench throwing drill. I've also done this on bleachers. You have to be careful and make sure there's space so they can drop their hand, but you could do it on bleachers. So that is actually one of my personal favorite drills. When you're teaching throwing too, here's a quick drill. This is the basketball throwing drill. And the reason I like this is, and with T-ball kids, sometimes a regular sized basketball is too big, but you have all different sizes of basketballs or like kickballs, whatever. Bring in a different size ball rather than a baseball. between a baseball size and a basketball size. The reason being, you'll see that to throw it, they have to control with two hands, but they naturally will have pretty good footwork. They'll step into it. It's very hard to throw a big ball like this with your feet stationary. So try that. And by the way, I'm a huge believer in what I call cross sports drills. I'm a huge NFL fan, and I go around to different NFL camps every summer, preseason. And a lot of times over the years, I've seen drills in football, and I transitioned that type of drill to baseball. Some worked, some didn't. The reason I'm saying this too is there are different coaches that are excellent pitching coaches, and they maintain and they start their pitchers a lot of times throwing a football. And they maintain if the football that they're throwing is a perfect spiral, that they have good arm motion. And that's where they start their practice with their pitches. So if you see a drill in another sport, I want you to try to create that. And it doesn't have to be just baseball. If you're a football or basketball coach or a hockey coach, you see a great baseball drill and you could use it in hockey, then by all means do. I've seen a lot of drills done from one sport to the other. So this is the basketball throw. Okay, moving along. This drill is really for kind of older kids. I put it in there, and the reason being it's the fence throwing drill. And what I did was a lot of kids will naturally throw sidearm. And I found that if you bring them close to a fence and have them throw into space, again, no catching, psychologically, they don't want to hit their wrist against the fence. So they're forced to throw what they say over the top. Now, make sure you give them ample space if you're going to do this with young kids. You don't want them to hit the fence, but the fact that they know the fence is there will help them force to throw the ball overhand, which I think is the way to do it. We've seen in major leagues, there are there are some pitchers that are submarine pitchers, and they're effective. Unfortunately, when you throw it sidearm or submarine, your arm gets tired very fast. Remember, there are natural ways of throwing. The pitcher gets tired fast that way, throws it overhand, it's the most effective way to pitch. When you look at softball pitching, it's such a natural motion. Softball pitchers could pitch 2, 3, 4 games in a row. Okay, so that's the fence throw drill. All right. And by the way, sometimes on this we touch upon, I like to give some parental hints. You know, I'm not saying I was the best parent. I just go through some things that work, that have worked with me, and some things that have not worked. This is the second to the last drill. It's a little more for the older kids, but I put it in. This was one of my best warm-up drills. It's called the line throw drill. And what I did is I lined up balls between at shortstop and at third base, 2 lines. And also I would stand over here and I'd yell point and yell go. First person has to pick it up and they have to throw it to first base. After they're done, they go to the end of the other line. And they rotate. Then I do the shortstop line. And what this is doing, we're giving players a lot of repetitions in a small period of time. What I would do in T-ball, what I've done in T-ball is instead of a player at first base, I put a coach there. Emphasize to the players, especially early in the year, you don't have to reach the first baseman on a fly. If the ball gets there 1 or 2 bounces, it's just as good. And what you want to do, if you're standing here as coach, you want to demonstrate first that your lead foot that you're stepping into is pointing to the target you're throwing to. So that's the line throw drill. when I coach 8 to 12-year-olds, this is one of my warm-up drills. I did it every practice. This is the last drill. And what I do with every team, even in T-ball, kids love it. And there's only one negative aspect to it. And what I do is I set up an obstacle course on some of the skills that we've been going over for 3 or 4 months. Kids love it. And this is just an example. You can set up any way you want. They hit off a tee, they run to first base, they run past there to the cone, then they go out to center field. There are balls. Now, this doesn't look as it should be, but there's a hula hoop against a fence or a screen. They try to throw the balls in there. And then they run to third base. There's some more balls. And they throw each ball into space in the outfield. And then they run home and touch home plate. Kids love doing this. It's just a different activity. The only negative with the obstacle course is you can only do one kid at a time. I save it for the last practice of the year, and they really love it too. Okay, all right. So that's going to wrap up the drills and just a parental tip. You know, it's the hardest job you have is being a parent. Okay, it's harder than any job you'll ever have in your life, but it's the most rewarding. And the dividends it pays is beyond belief. And you have to spend time working on it. I want to urge you, try not to spank your kids. Everything I've read is that it really affects them negatively. And I was, look, I was guilty. I spanked both my boys twice. They maintained it was 3 times, but I said it was twice, and I regret doing it. But try not to take out any of your frustrations on your kids. It's probably one of the worst things you could do. You know, one of the things I could tell you, my dad, who I didn't see a lot growing up because he was always working. He was a good dad, but he was working a lot, and he was like a warehouse manager in the South Bronx of a lumber company. It's actually a family business, and it was challenging. The workers were challenging. It was a tough crew. But I noticed with him, and I would go down there and work with him sometimes, when he came home, he had a very good ability to separate what happened at work and not to bring it through the front door. So try to do that and, try to encourage your kids too. All right, I'm going to give you the answer to the trivia question. Burt Reynolds was actually recruited by Florida State University. He was an incredible halfback in high school in Florida. And unfortunately, he got injured very early in his career, injured a knee, and he was rehabbing it. Then he was in a car accident and he re-injured it again. And then he went into acting. So that's the answer to the trivia question. A couple of things I want to bring out as I'm looking up on the channel after each episode, I'm going to have an archive page, and I'll try to describe what the episode was about. We just did an episode with Bobby Woods, and if you didn't see it, you got to watch this. Bobby Woods is one of the top 5 batting instructors in the country. We're going to have him on again. The episode was very short. Another episode I did, if you have an older kids or when your kids get older after T-ball, is how to run an efficient batting practice and increase the amount of repetitions the players get, anywhere from 20 to 30%. Took me about 4 or 5 years to figure this out, but it was very effective. So I urge you to watch that too. I'm going to go through a couple of my products. Again, if you don't have the money to pay for them, don't spend it. Ask your library. A couple of books. I'll point out 2 books and let's see. Okay, a lot of the drills you just saw come from this book, T-Ball Drills. There's like 110 drills. Another book is T-Ball Skills and Drills. Between these 2 books, you're going to have like 150 drills. I urge you to keep it part of your library too. Okay, so those are 2 books. Just another book that I have just came out. If you're coaching any 8 years old and up, T-ball championship baseball drills has 115 drills. Again, go to your library, see if they'll carry it. You could always get it on Amazon if you do. It's more than appreciated. But if I don't want you to spend money if you don't have it. I said I would do 2 books in a video. I did 3. Here's one video. I'll put 59-minute baseball practice. I highly recommend it. I'll put a link down there on the channel. So that's going to wrap it up. We're going to have some more interviews. I know everybody like Bobby Woods. We'll do more of that. And I just want to let you know, I appreciate you if you subscribe to it or if you give me a thumbs up. If you could do it right now, I'll count to 2. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. There you go. Thank you. When you do a thumbs up, give me a thumbs up and subscribe. You're going to see, as you coach your kids, the ball tends to go in fair territory. You tend to get breaks. So keep that in mind. So this has been Marty Schupak for Schupak Sports. And until next time, I'll meet you at third base.